A man leans against his truck in the early morning light, feeling a visible sense of relief as if a long-awaited cleanup has finally begun. To him, the recent federal deployments represent a surgical force, the thin line protecting his city from chaos. He speaks of safety and accountability with a comfort born of certainty, convinced that any individual in a confrontation with federal agents must have earned their fate. He believes the system works because, for his world to remain intact, it has to. This certainty fractures when he's presented with raw, verified footage of Alex Preddy. The video does not show the sanitized clips of the evening news, but an ICU nurse standing with nothing but a smartphone. The viewer sees the pepper spray, the tackle, and the shots fired at point-blank range while Preddy was pinned to the ground. The neighbor's expression stalls. He stares at the screen, squinting, waiting for the threat to appear. The weapon, or the lunging movement promised by the official press release. It never comes. As the video loops, he does not react with anger toward the agents, but falls into a heavy silence. He mutters about missing context, yet the cognitive dissonance is audible. His mind is fighting to reconcile the execution on his screen with the hero narrative he has been fed for a lifetime. By evening, the White House labels that same nurse a domestic terrorist. This total reversal of observed reality marks the moment where the government commands the rejection of one's own senses. The tragedy of Renee Good and Alex Preddy is not merely the work of rogue agents, but a calculated, state-sponsored assault on the truth itself. In February 2026, a profound gap exists between the physical events on the streets and the official history written in real time. This collapse represents the intersection of three separate crises: a breakdown in state capacity, a crisis of reality, and the simulated threat of a modern American civil war. State capacity is defined by a government's ability to function without resorting to naked violence. The most fundamental capacity of any state is its monopoly on the controlled use of force, a control that has evaporated. In Minneapolis, 37-year-old Renee Good was shot and killed in her vehicle. While official reports claimed she used her car as a weapon to charge at agents, forensic video reveals her turning the wheel to navigate away from the confrontation. She was attempting to flee. For this, she was killed in broad daylight by a masked federal agent. Days later, Alex Preddy, a man whose professional life was dedicated to keeping people alive, was neutralized at a protest. He held a smartphone, not a weapon. There was no attempt to de-escalate the situation. Agents moved directly to pepper spray and physical force. While immobilized on the ground by 3 agents, he was shot at point-blank range. Legal precedent, specifically the 1985 Supreme Court case Tennessee v. Garner, established 40 years ago that deadly force cannot be used to prevent an escape unless the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious injury. The excuse of flight is not a legal justification for pulling the trigger. It is explicitly unconstitutional. The argument that a car is an inherent deadly weapon ignores the laws of physics. When an agent shoots a driver, the bullet does not hit the brakes. It incapacitates the operator, turning a controlled vehicle into a 3,000-pound unguided missile. This tactic makes the environment objectively more dangerous for every person on the street. By shooting at vehicles, agents violate both the Constitution and the Department of Homeland Security's own safety handbooks. They fail the threat assessment triad of ability, opportunity, and intention. Renee Good was turning away, negating intention. Alex Preddy was pinned, negating both opportunity and ability. This culture of impunity is systemic. An investigation by The Trace analyzed 59 ICE shootings between 2015 and 2021, revealing that in over half of those incidents, no arrest was ever made of the person shot. This implies that once the smoke cleared, there was insufficient evidence to charge the victims with a crime. Among these cases is Gabino Ramos Hernandez, a poultry worker in Mississippi. In 2016, agents arrived at the wrong address looking for a former resident. Ramos, exhausted from a grueling shift and consumed by the absolute fear prevalent in his community, fled in a moment of pure panic. Realizing he could not escape, he turned to surrender. He was unarmed and clutching his waistband because he lacked a belt. With one hand in the air and the other holding up his pants, he was shot. The agent, Philip Causey, stood over the bleeding man and blamed him for going for his pockets. Ramos survived with a permanently disabled arm and massive medical debt, while Agent Causey returned to work without suspension. Unlike local police forces, this paramilitary organization of 12,000 agents operates with oversight that is fragmented and toothless. Francis Fukuyama describes this as political decay. While tactical gear projects an image of power, brutality is actually a sign of weakness and a lack of competence. When a regime's actions contradict reality, it attempts to rewrite that reality through the decadence of language. Political spin becomes more important than the physical reality of a lost life. In Chicago, the administration claimed agents were under attack by a hostile mob, yet Judge Sarah L. Ellis released suppressed video showing protesters standing 30 feet away. In another instance, an official report claimed a bicyclist threw a bike at agents. The video revealed an agent seizing a bystander's bike and hurling it at the protesters. It is a textbook case of projection. The underlying philosophy of this administration is that objective truth is irrelevant. Truth is simply whatever serves the state at a given moment. The Union of Concerned Scientists has accused the government of gaslighting the nation using the language of psychological abuse to describe official communication. This decadence is seductive because it allows citizens to keep their worldviews intact, but it comes at the price of the social fabric. This fracture has moved beyond hyperbole and into the realm of kinetic violence. High-level simulations run by former generals and intelligence officers now war-game green-on-green violence, scenarios where U.S. Army uniforms fire upon U.S. National Guard uniforms. This is no longer science fiction. In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz is under federal investigation for attempting to assert state oversight over ICE operations. In response, the president has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act, and the 11th Airborne Division, an invasion force of paratroopers, is being readied for domestic deployment. Under the Supreme Court's ruling in Trump v. United States, the president now possesses criminal immunity for such official acts. The social trust required to stop this collapse has cratered below 30% in the United States. In high-trust societies, the marginalized are integrated into the national project. In the current American landscape, the bottom is viewed as a hostile underclass that must be policed and controlled. That definition has now expanded to include any citizen who disagrees with the regime, the nurse, the student, and the governor. When half the country is viewed as a hostile underclass, the shared national project dies, replaced by a struggle for tribal survival. The future of the republic now rests on the individual soldier. Every service member is obligated to refuse any legal order. However, if the state successfully reclassifies fellow citizens as domestic terrorists, the soldier faces a crisis of reality. If they choose the state's narrative over the evidence of their own eyes, the result is civil war. The tragedy of Renee Good and Preddy is that their deaths are being used to dismantle the truth, the last barrier against an authoritarian state. In an era where the government demands that you reject your own senses, the act of witnessing and remembering becomes the most necessary form of resistance.